Canberra is quite an interesting relationship. As you expect, an ex-Navy pilot, ex-Air Force fighter pilot, how did I end up flying this? And we'll get to that later on. But when I was Chief of Air Force, a significant thing happened for me that was around the Canberra. And you would have seen in that movie there that we had two missing in action that were shot down in November 1970. That was Mike Herbert and Rob Carver. When I became Chief of Air Force, we were just finishing off. We'd had 6 missing in action across the Defence Force, 4 Army and 2 Air Force in Vietnam. And I became Chief of Air Force, and there was talk about trying to find Mike and Rob. So I had a coffee with a guy that's passed now, an ex-Chief of Air Force called Errol McCormick, who was an ex-bomber guy. And we sat down and I said to him, tell me everything you know about Magpie 9-1. Because there are a lot of myths and legends out there about what happened to it, where it went, and what had occurred. And he went through the story of what he knew, and I said to him, is it worth going in and bringing him home? Because I wanted to bring him home on my watch, and he said, most definitely. But where do you start? The jungle's a big jungle. We'd had a lot of searches out there. We had never found anything. We'd had a couple of false starts which had created some concern with the families. So if we were going to do this, we were going to do it right. And just before I took over as Chief of Air Force, I was reading a book that talked about the silent service, and it talked about how the US Navy found a nuclear submarine that had disappeared in the Atlantic called the USS Scorpion. And off one SOSUS hit that went off at a certain time, they narrowed down where that submarine was to a 10-mile radius, and when they found it, it was right in the middle of the circle they found. And they used a decision-making tool, which is when you get to a decision point, take the logical answer and follow it. And I figured if they can find a submarine in the Atlantic, we can find a Canberra bomber wreckage and our 2 MIA in Vietnam. And we knew the target, we knew the release point, we knew what they were doing, and with the help of bomber crews that had been there, we helped plot this out. And we got Defence Science and Technology Group to go in with their modelling tools and look at the most logical point that the aircraft may have been. And they came out with a little splay on a map and said it's in this area here. And then we sent a couple of officers in. One was Major Jack Thurger, a Australian Army major who had been in a number of times to bring back the other MIA, and Air Force Squadron Leader John Cottrell. And they went in and they started talking to villagers in these particular areas in the splay that we had narrowed down. And they got to one village, and they were talking to the old villagers about what they were trying to do, and it was right over towards the border with Laos. And this old guy went, oh, and just disappeared off into the bush. And so our couple of guys were sitting there going, what's going to happen here? And he said, oh no, he knows something. And so they waited, and they waited and waited. I can't remember if it was a day or the second day he came back. He came back out of the jungle, and he had a piece of instrumentation out of the aircraft. I think it was the air nav computer. It was a little piece of that, and gave it to them. Said, oh, okay, so we knew there was a B-57, which was a US Air Force variant, or a Canberra in the area. And so based on that, the team we formed a team and sent them in. They had to sort of cross through waterfalls and all sorts of things to get in there. And they found some wreckage. And the first thing they found in the wreckage was a plaque off the wingtip bomb rack. And they took a photo of that, sent it back through satellite phone. We analysed it. It was a US Air Force bomb rack. So that was off a B-57. So we asked our maintenance engineers, did we ever use US Air Force bomb racks? The answer was definitely no, never did it. Okay, wrong. Subsequently we did. But then they discovered a piece of rubber, and we used Dunlop tyres. The US Air Force used Goodyear, and it was off a little piece of rubber that we decided that was our aircraft. So we had an idea that was the aircraft, and then we had some archaeology-trained Air Force reservists. We've got some great Air Force reservists in this country, and then they started to dig and look at where the cockpit might have gone in. And they found a little piece of cloth and a little disc. And a little disc, I won't say what was on it, but it was a disc from a drinking club that the troops had, the maintainers had in Vietnam. And we thought, that's pretty interesting. So we called back, and I can't remember if Lance might have been in on this, but Errol rang around, and we found out that this disc was from a 2-squadron drinking club in Vietnam. And the question was any aircrew a member of this? And the answer was yes, Mike Herbert. And so we knew those remains there were Mike Herbert's remains. And then through a bit of analysis, we figured out where the remains of Rob Carver would be, and we found some remains there. So we were able to separate them and finally bring them home. It took a little bit. The Vietnamese government were very, very helpful for us and helped us do all that. And we did a repatriation with the families out of Hanoi International Airport, which was an ex-MiG base, which was interesting sitting there. We brought them home. By the time the C-130 got home, we were all back on a VIP jet. We sat on the ramp at Richmond when they landed, and there was just a loud cheer and applause for them coming home. And when that cheer and applause was happening, this thing was parked right next to the dais. And so this Canberra aircraft welcomed our last 2 missing in action home from Vietnam. And for me, I really got attached to it as a part of that story and that whole journey over a year of being able to bring our last 2 servicemen home from Vietnam. So when in 2018, 2019, I've retired from as my wife will say, retired from the Defence Force. We have a place out here. I was asked whether I wanted to fly one of the aircraft with the museum. And I immediately jumped at it, and most people go, oh, fly the Spitfire, fly this, fly that. I said, no, I'd like to fly the Canberra and bring it back into service. One, because I'd love to fly the jet, but the other was it would be great for the legacy of the servicemen who served in Vietnam and those that gave their lives that I'd helped as a part of 10 years previously bringing them home. And as a part of that, as David Lowy funded to bring the aircraft back in, and then it came back into Air Force through some weird sets of events, I ended up back as a reservist in Air Force flying the aircraft. And it is a privilege to fly this aeroplane. She is a very beautiful aircraft to fly, very graceful. And just the way it looks on the ground is the way it feels in the aircraft. It's not particularly manoeuvrable. It's like a Harley Davidson. When you open it up, you want to be pointed where you're going to go because that's where you're going to go. But it's a beautiful machine, and it's a privilege as a pilot to be able to demonstrate it and show it off to new generations of people. And I thought it would be appealing to veterans, and it obviously is from talking to a few people today. But we were down at Shell Harbour earlier in the year, and I was walking back from the aircraft, and we've got the Spitfire and the Mustang, we've got them all flying. I hear this, oi, oi, oi. And I looked in the crowd, I couldn't see anyone in the crowd, walked a bit further up, and then there, oi! And there was a little 8-year-old boy running across. He said, Mister, can you sign my hat? And I'm going, but I'm not a Spitfire pilot, I'm not the... No, you fly the Canberra. And then his mum caught up, and his mum said all he wanted to do at Shell Harbour today was see the Canberra fly. And I thought all the effort that Andy and the team do to get that thing flying and give me the privilege of being able to fly it is worth it, because it's obviously inspiring new generations just as it inspired old generations. Thanks, mate. Thanks for letting me talk about it.